You're about to listen to a BBC podcast, and maybe it's one I had a hand in. I'm Tammy Walker, and I produce podcasts for the BBC. My role is to give new and diverse creators a voice with the opportunity to build a career. That's the thing I love about podcasts. You start with just a good idea, but then you have the space to see where it goes. And doing that at the BBC means we can really run with the best stories while developing the most unique audio talent. So if you like what you hear, why not check out the huge range of podcasts we've got on BBC Sounds?
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. I'm Martin Dowden, and as we record, it's the evening of Sunday the 28th of January. We're here to kickstart your football week by searching for the answer to all the big questions, if I can think of any, after another weekend of drama. Questions like, have Hearts got third place in the bag?
Oh yes, what a strike! Lawrence Shankland, magnificent!
Stephen Naismith says, not yet. Also,
it's not good enough. We're away. We're in the Championship next season at this rate.
Are Livingston doomed for the Championship already? And Philippe Clement talked him up on Friday, but what exactly will Rangers' new boy Mohamed Diomande bring to the table? We'll talk to a man in the know.
A player who's developed a lot this season and just seems to be ready for this next step.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast.
Now, our guests today are a hairdresser and a deputy, the barber formerly of Brockville, ex-striker at Falkirk, Aberdeen, Livingston, and that's just about every other club you could think of. Lee Miller joins us. How's it going, Lee?
I'm all good, thanks. There's probably plenty more you could have thrown in there, clubs-wise, but
I looked at the list, but we've only got 20 minutes, so I need to crack on. And our deputy today is Mark Hendry, Deputy Editor of Football Scotland. Hey Mark, how are you doing?
Not bad, Martin.
Let's quickly run through some of the Scottish football headlines. In the SWPL, Glasgow City closed the gap in second place Celtic with a 1-0 win over their city rivals, while Rangers extended their lead at the top with a 2-1 win at Aberdeen. The men's Premiership was back after the winter break, and it's like it's never been away. No change at the top after Celtic and Rangers both ground out narrow 1-0 wins over Ross County and St Mirren. Hearts beat Aberdeen 2-0 at Tynecastle to tighten their grip in third place and heap more pressure on the Dons, while Livingston stay rooted to the bottom, 6 points adrift after a 4-1 defeat at home against Dundee. And in transfer news, Rangers midfielder Jose Cifuentes is on the verge of a move to Turkish club Rispor on an initial loan deal with a £2 million option to buy.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Right, let's move on to the weekend's action just there. Two of your former clubs, Lee, went head-to-head at Tynecastle. Hearts running out 2-0 winners over Aberdeen. Let's cut to the chase. Where does this leave Barry Robson?
First of all, Barry knows the enormity of the club, how big a club it is, and he understands they need to be winning virtually every game. The pressure he's under at the moment, he knew what he was getting himself into, and he finds himself in not a great run of form. And not just the form, I don't think the Aberdeen fans are enjoying the style of football he's playing at the moment. I covered the cup final, and I just didn't think they laid a glove on Rangers. It was disappointing. From speaking to the fans, I think they're getting really frustrated. Listen, he had a great start to his Aberdeen career as a manager, and they couldn't not give him the job. I think a lot of the fans, their patience is running very thin, and I think I heard the rumour there's going to be a protest at the game on Tuesday against Dundee, and that's a huge game for Aberdeen. Huge game, because Dundee in a really good run of form under Tony Docherty, who's doing an unbelievable job there. And I think if he gets beaten that game, he's really up against it, because he's obviously got the Old Firm the next two games after that. So, no, I feel for Barry, because I really like him and understand the situation he's in, and I just think there's so much pressure on managers at the moment. And listen, he's got 3 games in hand, and I know obviously you've got to win those 3 games, but if he wins those 3 games, he's joint points with Kilmarnock, who are 4th in the league, and that's obviously 10 points behind who they're chasing, Hearts, at the moment. But they just need to concentrate in each game as it comes and try and win those games, and it's every game as it comes just now, because as a manager, that's all you can look forward to.
You know all about the expectation up there at Aberdeen. As you say, they've got 3 games in hand, and it would leave them 10 points behind Hearts, if indeed they won all of those 3 games.
Yeah.
Do you think the expectation for third is unrealistic when the club are sort of they seem in this sort of transformative period at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think it's unrealistic. No, the money they've spent up in Aberdeen, and everybody knows about it. Dave Cormack's put his hand in his pocket and he spent a lot of money. And the wage bill, I don't know the exact figures of the wage bill up there, but I can guarantee it's not far off the Hearts, and it'll be maybe the third, fourth in Scotland. So I think the Aberdeen fans have got every right to be annoyed. And listen, Barry will be annoyed at that as well, and the coaching staff will be annoyed, the players will be annoyed. They have got a squad that should be up there challenging at the top end of the league. Maybe not splitting Old Firm, but that's where Aberdeen feel they should be. As fans, I know what the expectation levels are like up there, and I felt they done well in Europe. They showed up well. Obviously, some of the results are a wee bit naive and they kind of let it slide a wee bit. But I think all in all, their performances in Europe are good. They just need to tie down their performances and results in the league, if anything.
Mark, obviously from a media point of view, how do you view the scrutiny that's on the Aberdeen manager right now? I think a lot of managers in this situation point to the media and pundits, etc. But as Lee saying there, it's fans that are driving that, surely, or do you disagree?
It's a high expectation there. So to be sitting, I think, is it 8th that they're in the moment, is just unacceptable. I mean, that's the honest truth of it. I think fans are, in my opinion anyway, right to be angry because they demand such high standards there. And Barry knows that. It's just the nature of the game.
We're talking about scrutiny and managers. Stephen Naismith at Hearts, he had a bit on him as well. He's now sitting pretty in third. Do you think anyone can catch them there, to both of you?
I generally don't think they can. I think, to be fair, Barry and Naismith were probably in the same boat at one point. There were rookie managers coming into it, and ones went one way, the other went the other, and there's a lot of pressure on managers at the moment. But the run that Naismith and Hearts have been on is brilliant. I think it's 7 unbeaten in the league. That started off with a 2-0 win away to Celtic. They've really turned things around, and obviously it helps having a class act up front, scoring loads of goals in Shanklin. So it'll be interesting to see if he still stays at Hearts at the end of the transfer window. But I think he will, personally, and obviously Stephen Naismith will be desperate for him to stay there.
Mark, do you think Lawrence Shanklin will still be there at the end of it? And the same question, do you think they've pretty much got third in the bag, barring a disaster?
Some supporters of some clubs in Scotland might not like to hear it, but I do think Lawrence will stay at Hearts. There's just something there with Stephen Naismith and the club. They seem to be building something. I'm not saying that Lawrence is going to be there long term, but I could see him being one of a number of players this season to sign a new contract, and I think he'll stay. As for anyone catching Hearts, I don't see that at all. I think guarding against complacency for Naismith is probably one of the most important things for him now, because if he can do that and if he can keep grinding out 3 points even every second week, I think he'll do the job and keep them in third.
Talking about grinding out results, let's look at Rangers and Celtic. I was at St Mirren for the 1-0 win for Rangers on Saturday. Conditions were horrendous. I don't know if that came across in radio or television. But I mean, they get the result again. Lee, it seems we've got a real title challenge on, haven't we?
Yeah, it's great to see. From a neutral's point of view, it is great to see. They're grinding out results and winning games and having that knack of winning games ugly. And obviously the conditions played a part in that, and they adjusted. I think I heard Philip come on saying that it wasn't about pretty footballers, it was about grafting and getting the job done. And I think they've done that, and I don't think they've had that in the past. They've not been grinding out results. They've tried to kind of play pretty football when it's not been on to play. But they rolled their sleeves up, got on with it, and I thought Dessers took his goal superbly well. That's not an easy finish to take it past the goal line and put it in. So no, I think credit to Rangers, they've made it interesting, and obviously Celtic just narrowly beaten Ross County as well. He had a few chances I've seen in the game, and it makes it interesting for a title challenge up there.
Mark, what did you make of Brendan Rodgers after that Celtic match, the comments he made to the media?
He's a manager whose team have just gone out and won 3 points, which I suppose at the end of the day is the ultimate goal. Whether it's a frustration that's sort of culminated from the transfer window coming to a close, they've only brought in one player. You know, he's been clear that he's wanted more than one player in, at least this window. You know, his team's just gone out and won a game. They've done it ugly, as you say. You know, sometimes that's just simply what has to happen if the game's not going 90 miles an hour in Celtic's favour. So he's maybe just showing a wee bit of personality when it comes to maybe a wee bit of frustration that the fans have not taken to the performance as well as they could have. But again, that's what happens when Celtic don't go out and dominate for 90 minutes.
Briefly, Lee, have you ever missed 2 penalties in a game?
No.
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Shocking, isn't it?
I've scored 2 in a game though. It was really interesting. Actually, I was up at St Johnstone Muddle at the weekend and I heard that come through the radio and I thought, missing 2 penalties, like a retake of penalty. It was very casual the way he done it as well, to be honest. It was interesting. But I think it's a combination. Brendan Rodgers came out and saying all that. It is a combination of lack of signings and Celtic not blitzing a team at home. That's what the fans want to see. And obviously Ross County have been down the bottom of the league and not playing particularly well, and they come there and they nearly grind out a draw. And that's why the fans are kind of venting their frustration, if anything. But I suppose they're entitled to say what they want to say.
Time is of the essence in this. You don't get much time in this podcast, so I'm going to crack right on. 2 each, Kilmarnock, Hibs coming back from 2 down. The big talking point for me anyway was the red card for Corey and Daba. Either of you two think it's a red card?
Not a chance.
Yes and no. Do you know what doesn't help, right? What doesn't help in this is AstroTurf. I think, see if that's not an Astro, because his studs actually get caught and Daba catches and his ankle rolls. See if it's in grass, he catches him and his leg goes away. So I don't think the pitch helps in this matter. It's just one of those awkward ones. You can't pull your leg back once you've hit the ball, because he obviously gets loads of the ball. As soon as you touch the ball, you can't then pull your leg back. So the follow through is going to catch him, but it's just the nature that catches him kind of halfway up his shin. It's a nasty one, and if I'm on the end of that, I'm screaming for him to be sent off. If I'm given the tackle, it's all the way about. So
look, I'm an impartial BBC reporter. I can possibly have an opinion on this, but the game's gone anyway. Motherwell very quickly. A 1-1 draw. I've spoken to Stuart Kettlewell so many times, and I can just feel his frustration. It feels as though things are good around the club. They just can't get those results. You've obviously got the insight in there, Lee, with your son in there. What did he need to do to just get a couple of wins and get up that table?
I know that's the thing. They're so close. I went to the Hibs game. They should have won that game. They should have seen that out. A slack clearance. Then Hibs get the goal and they draw that game as well. And they'd so much of the play on Saturday there that they should have won the game. They should have won the game with a few chances. And St Johnstone, to be honest, never really offered much, albeit obviously scored really early in the game with a set play that Motherwell have really struggled defending set plays this season. So they just need a scrappy 1-0. Scrappy 1-0, get the points on the board and go on a 3-4 game winning streak, and it would get them up there. Because they have got the squad to do it. I believe they do need to make maybe a couple of signings. Maybe another striker to help Theo Bair up there, because if he takes an injury, then they're down to the bare bones. We've got a couple of young boys, but I don't think you can rely on that going forward and starting games, and obviously with the pressure of being down that end of the league.
Mark, can you see a way back for Livingston at home to Ross County, just above them on Tuesday night?
If I'm being brutally honest, no, I don't. I think they're on a hiding to nothing, because you'll know yourself, having watched David Martindale speak to the BBC actually after the game. He looked defeated, if I'm being completely honest. I don't see them catching Ross County. They've got a couple of games in hand as well. So I fear a wee bit for Livingston. This season might just be a wee bit too far.
Lee, briefly, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think, listen, I've got a lot of time and respect for Dave, and he's done a fantastic job there. But the interview the other day didn't look great. But knowing Davey and knowing he's a very, very clever man, he's maybe thrown that out there to try and relieve the pressure from his players. If he's saying, listen, that's us done, we're down to it, going out and play with freedom, sometimes that can work in your favour. Maybe he's trying to play a wee bit of reverse psychology. I don't know, but it did look a bit defeatist, his interview. But no, yeah, we'll see what happens. But he's finding it difficult to recruit players, by the sounds of it. Who wants to get involved in a relegation battle? It's a tough gig to try and recruit players to come and battle and fight for your corner.
I mentioned earlier, Rangers have signed Ivorian midfielder Mohamed Diomande from Danish side Nordsjælland. Fair bit of hype around him, so what can we expect? Have Rangers found a Diomande in the rough? Oof, I wrote that as well, unbelievable. I caught up with Nicklas Dehn, sports journalist and host at Danish Radio 4 to find out. Nicklas, you're a man in the know, a journalist out there in Denmark, and have seen the player himself, age 22, over 100 appearances for the side. How would you describe him?
He's a very versatile midfielder, quite the great composure, covers the ball very nicely. He's not a big lad physically, but even though he's extremely hard to get the ball off, so sort of a complete midfielder, the typically complete midfielder, if you want to describe one, that can play this number 8. He can play a little further up the field, a little farther down the field. He can actually play on the wings too, if that's necessary. So a very tactically flexible player with a great potential, who's just been developing on and on in this always very talented FC Nordsjælland side, who just knows how to develop players. So Rangers are getting a great prospect with a great potential. There's always been a lot of clubs after almost every one of FC Nordsjælland's young talents, because they are a extremely great talent academy. Their academies, in especially Western Africa, is top notch. They always get some extremely exciting players up, and of course they've been selling some great talents like Ernest Nuama and Simon Adingra, Mohamed Kudus just the last couple of years. And in this line of players, Diomande has sort of been a little, I would say, in the shadow, because these are attacking players who's gone for great sums of money, but he's always been there the last couple of years. And this season especially, he's developed to a very mature player for his age and a very important player for FC Nordsjælland at a very important stage. He's been one of the best players in the very exciting European League campaign. So a player who's, of course, as I said, developed the last couple of years, developed a lot this season, and just seems to be ready for this next step at the very most convenient time. So I guess a lot of clubs around the level of Rangers has been after him, and Rangers should be very happy that they managed to get him on.
Philippe Clement seemed to suggest that he sees him as a player that one can make a lot of impact in the short term, but in the longer term will be a real asset in terms of sellability. Do you see this as the type of player that can go on and play in maybe one of the big 5 leagues in Europe, for example?
I very clearly see him having a potential that in just a couple of years would be something that big clubs, medium clubs from top 5 leagues would be after. So there's a great developing potential for him at a club like Rangers. And I think they got him for about 5 million euros, and that should be something they could build on, and in a couple of years sell him for even more.
Just a random thought I have. I have many random thoughts, but I thought I would throw a quick one about Matt O'Reilly, who's attracted a bit of attention from Atletico Madrid, obviously involved in the Denmark setup. How is he seen over there in Denmark?
There's a lot of focus on him because we're not used to these players being raised in other countries, but having Danish roots, being put on the Danish national team, and a lot of Danes think that's very exciting. He's been getting a lot of press, a lot of focus when he's been with the Danish national team, and he was only a guy that was being sort of looked to a couple of years back, and there's not been a lot of focus from the Danish football fans towards Scotland, so many hadn't noticed him, then were surprised when suddenly there was a guy running around in Celtic that could be a Danish national team. We have to go back to when Brian Laudrup played at Rangers or Thomas Krausen played at Celtic before Danish football fans really looked towards Scotland, but that has sort of happened again now, and a lot of football fans in Denmark are sort of having Celtic on their live score just to keep track of how this young lad Matt O'Reilly are doing, and we actually see him as a Danish national team player now, and someone who could be going to the Euros this summer.
Time to wrap things up for this edition of the Scottish Football Podcast. My thanks to Lee Miller, Mark Hendry and Nicklas Dehn, and thank you for listening. Remember, our email address is scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk if you get any comments or questions for us. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe and follow the Scottish Football Podcast so you don't miss an episode. Thanks very much for listening. Keep right up to date at the BBC Sport Scotland website.
The winter transfer window is braving the British weather and is wide open once again.
More drama, more twists, more turns.
I am Kay Curd, and every weekday throughout January I'll be joined by Luke Edwards and some of the country's best football journalists to dissect the day's transfer rumours.
From BBC Radio 5 Live, the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast.
Who will your team buy, sell, loan, or even just be heavily linked with, only to lose out to your rivals?
What will happen next?
Keep up to date with all the comings and goings straight from the rumour mill with the Transfer Gossip Daily Podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.